1 minute till broadcast. We are now streaming.
Recording in progress.
Got it.
Two citizens matters. He may not be here. I had heard in advance he was coming. He's a blind person.
Okay.
And,
Who's the other one?
both of those assistants.
Good afternoon. If the chamber would be in order, we are ready to begin. It's October 19th. It is 1:00 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting of the Durham City Council a work session officially to order for the purposes of faithfully discharging the business of the people of Durham. Her Honor, Mayor O'Neill is not here today, obviously, and we send her our best wishes and regards as she's traveling. I will be conducting the meeting as Mayor Pro Tem today, and let the record reflect I'll be assuming the gavel. Good afternoon, honorable colleagues, to everyone in the room, to everyone who may be watching on whatever platform. At this time, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Mayor O'Neill has requested and been granted an excused absence. Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm here.
Councilmember Caballero? Councilmember Freeman?
Present.
Councilmember Holsey-Hyman has requested an excused absence today. Councilmember Johnson? And Councilmember Williams?
I'm present.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. At this time now, I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any announcements, and I'll yield. I'll look to my left first. Seeing none to my left, I'll look to my right. Any announcements? Okay, all right then. I don't have any either. At this time, I'm going to yield to our city manager for any priority items she may have. Good afternoon, Madam Manager.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. I do have several priority items for the council's consideration today. The very first item I have is a recognition of the Durham Parks and Recreation Department being re-accredited through the National Recreation and Parks Association Commission for Accreditation of Park and Recreation Agencies, CAPRA. I would like to ask Wade Walcott, our director, to come to the podium or come to the microphone and make a very few remarks before I continue my priority items.
Thank you, Madam Manager. Good afternoon, members of council, Mayor Pro Tem Wade Walcott with Parks and Recreation Department. Thank you for this opportunity. We're just very excited for this opportunity to talk about the accreditation process that our department went through. It was not possible without several people putting this work together. We traveled to Dallas, Texas, where we were recognized as one of only 14 communities in the state to be an accredited Parks and Recreation Department. There are only 206 accredited agencies in the country. This includes 154 standards of best practice that a Parks and Recreation agency has to meet. There are approximately 36 to 38 fundamental standards you cannot miss. However, our department, we did not miss a single standard. So out of 154, we met 154 standards. Just a good example of the quality of people that we have working in our department. And I'd like to give a special recognition to the folks, if they can stand up behind me. Most of them were a chapter lead in this very, very long, detailed process. Special thanks to Gina Murray as she led the team, so thank you very much. So yes, we're very proud of this accomplishment, but we're also very proud that it's not just something that's on in a book or on a piece of paper, but it's something that we practice every day as we serve our residents. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Wade, and your team who is here today to receive this recognition. Next, there is additional information, and it has been attached under the section priority items by the city manager, city attorney, and city clerk in response to questions related to the carryover funding agenda item that was approved by the council during the October the 5th City Council work session. You will find that memo attached in that section. Agenda item number 10, which is a Durham Comprehensive Plan. The item was approved during the October the 16th City Council meeting and was placed on the October 19th work session agenda in error. So the item has been removed from the agenda. Agenda item number 15, which is a proposed amendment to lease between City of Durham and Candlebull Inc., DBA Indian Monsoon at Unit 100 and Unit 421 of the Morgan Rigsby parking garage. This item was on the October 5th work session agenda, and it was referred back to the General Services Department. This item was also placed on the October 19th work session agenda in error, so it is subsequently being removed from the agenda. Agenda item number 17, the Upper Neuse River Basin Association Consensus Principles 2 for the revised Falls Lake Nutrient Management Strategy. This item includes a presentation, and we estimate about 20 minutes for that presentation. And finally, agenda item number 25, which is the Commerce Street Apartments LLC Affordable Housing Loan Commitment, is a supplemental item, and it has been added. So thank you for your consideration of these priority items today.
Thank you, Madam Manager, for your priority items. Let me, on behalf of the mayor and the entire city, congratulate our one of my favorite television shows, our Parks and Rec department, for the incredible work they do. Let's give them a hand one more time for their accreditation. I know sometimes the work goes unheralded and unnoticed, but it is something that our parks and our open space and our trails are things that our residents cherish, and one of the things that sets our city apart and makes it one of the best places to live in our country. So congratulations to all of you, and to you, Madam Manager, as well, and your entire team. At this time, I'll yield now to our city attorney. Standing in for our city attorney, the Honorable Representative Don O'Toole, for any priority items he may have. Good to see you, Don. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. The city attorney's office does actually have one priority item, and that is related to agenda item number 6, modification of the existing Durham-Chapel Hill annexation boundary. At the request of the developer, we are asking council this afternoon to suspend the rules and to vote on the resolution that's proposed. I think council members will remember I gave a presentation on this a month ago, and this would be the first step of many steps that the development would need to go through in order to effectuate the development and be able to provide city water and sewer service to this development. The first step is approval of this resolution by council. Chapel Hill has already approved the resolution. And then the second step after that would be to go to a judge and have the annexation boundary revised. I just wanted to remind council, not that the development is before you today, but this development, the proposal is to include 75 to 80 units of affordable housing. 25% of those units would be affordable at 30% AMI, and 75% would be affordable at the level of 60% AMI. And the developer has made this request so that they can get all of their entitlements in place and meet the state deadline, which is this May of next year. So City Attorney's Office would like to request that council suspend the rules and vote on this resolution today.
Thank you, Councilor. Just for clarification, is there anything happening between now and I heard you mention the date May of next year, anything between now and our November 6th regular meeting that makes this a matter pressing?
Not that I'm aware of. This was just a request from the developer. I think their position is that any time is valuable to them in order to meet that May deadline. I think you'll recall from my presentation that this is the first step. So this resolution needs to be approved. We would need to go to a Superior Court judge, get the boundary modified. Then the developer would actually have to submit a consolidated annexation item. That goes through a lengthy city review period, and then council would consider the consolidated annexation item.
All right, thank you so much for that. At this time, I'll yield to our city clerk for any announcements she may have. Good afternoon, Madam Clerk.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. The city clerk's office does not have any priority items this afternoon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right. Yeah, we'll now have our items to attend to that are pursuant to our priority item from our city attorney. There's a request to suspend the rules to move item number 6. At this time, I'll ask my colleagues for a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Williams and a second from Councilmember Johnson. No clickers today. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Those opposed? All right, then. Is there language to the motion? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing amendment to the consent order, Town of Chapel Hill versus City of Durham, 85 CVS 3108, and approving a modification of the line representing the limits for future annexations by the municipalities of Chapel Hill and Durham.
So moved.
I have a motion from Councilmember Williams and a second from Councilmember Caballero. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That resolution is adopted. Well, at this time, did you? All right, at this time, we'll also act on the city manager's priority items. I'll entertain a motion to approve the city manager's priority items.
So moved.
Second.
I hear a motion from Councilmember Caballero and a second from Councilmember Williams. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, those priority items are approved. Multitasking, y'all, excuse me. At this time now, I will read our administrative consent items, our agenda for the record. Starting with administrative consent items from the city clerk's office, item number 1, Housing Appeals Board appointment. Item number 2, Durham Historic Preservation appointment. Item number 3, Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment. Item number 4, Durham Workers' Right Commission appointment. Under departmental items from the Audit Services Department, item number 5, Underutilized Business Compliance Performance Audit, September 2023. And I believe this we're going to pull this item. Resident. Under the city attorney's office, item number 6, modification of the existing Durham-Chapel Hill annexation boundary. We just took action on that item. Under city council, item number 7, discussion on an infrastructure bond. Under the city manager's office, item number 8, 2023 revised statewide mutual aid agreement. Item number 9, American Rescue Plan Act ARPA project transformative justice program. Under our finance department, item number 11, September 2023 bid report. Item number 12, utility system revenue bond anticipation note, series 2023. Under general services department, item 13, redevelopment of 505 West Chapel Hill Street update. That item is being pulled. Item number 14, change order number 3 to the construction services contract with Chatham Civil Contracting LLC for the Beechwood Cemetery expansion project. Under Office of Economic and Workforce Development, agreement to fund the establishment of Bull City Equitable Development Fund operated by Built to Last Innovations Lab, Inc., using City of Durham grant funds. Under the Public Works Department, item number 17, Upper Neuse River Basin Association, UNRBA Consensus Principles 2 for the revised Falls Lake Nutrient Management Strategy. That is a presentation. Item number 18, utility extension agreement with D.R. Horton, Inc. to serve Brightleaf North. Under Solid Waste Management Department, item number 19, contract for lawn care and landscaping services at the Waste Disposal and Recycling Center. Under public hearings, City County Planning Department, item number 20, zoning map change, Hobson Road multifamily. Item number 21, zoning map change, Cortez Drive townhouses. Item number 22, zoning map change, Millhouse Towns. Item number 23, zoning map change, Durham Summit. And item number 24, consolidated annexation, Perry Farm. under supplemental items that our manager presented earlier. Item number 25, up from our Community Development Department, item number 25, Commerce Street Apartments, LLC, Affordable Housing Loan Commitment. That is the end of the reading of the agenda. We do have 2 citizen matters to be heard at 1 p.m., and we'll now turn to our citizen matters. The first name I have is Mr. James Brown. If he's in chamber. Madam Clerk, do we have a James Brown on the, all right, I don't see.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I do not see him in the queue.
Thank you for that. Antonio Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you being here. You'll have 3 minutes. If you just state your name, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Antonio Smith. Thank you for letting me speak today. I stand before this council not only as an employee of the city of Durham, but also as a concerned Durhamite. Yes, I have stood before you before to fight for livable wages and fair pay, but I am here on behalf of the urban communities today. On behalf of urban communities that we've been forgotten and left behind in your budget and community planning. Unnoticed and valued people until polls are open. Our suffering neighborhoods have been under attack by politicians who are not from here or know anything about us or our history in this city. Also claim longevity and are here but seem to have forgotten how they got here. People who pour their heart and soul out into this city, making this great place you want to live or that you want to live in, are being forced to live and seek housing in other counties that don't welcome them with open arms, as we seem to do here. Alongside strong-standing urban communities, our old Parks and Recreation community raised about 9 generations of this city's great people. Parks and Rec is now an entertainment entity, as we can see. Urban children have no safe havens anymore, with nearly all recreation centers with them being shuttered or closed and left to rot to fall apart in our neighborhoods. I guess we'll leave this for those investors too. What happened to the loving of our neighborhood, the village that raised our kids? Are they of no value or concern to you? That's not a question for the people. It's a fact. Our children are our future, or is that not a concern either? What about the safety of our babies? Well, I stepped forward today because this small fight for money opened my eyes to a continuous cycle over the past 20 years that needs to be fixed. Addressing it is a past due agenda. But it's past time to sweep around our own back door now. It's time to clean up our neighborhoods. Take care of home. That's priorities. Stop pushing people who made Durham what it is away. The heart of the city, the people. The heart of the city is the people. Acts around Durhamites make Durham. That's its heart. The indigenous people, we are the history of Durham, and we still exist. Think it's bad now. Get the original locals riled up. You've seen it before. If you haven't, it's coming, trust me. I listen to these voices every day. The city council meetings could get to be a real interesting view. Oh, my last thought, something touched me the last week when we were all young black men asked who adjusted our crown. I'm out of time. Well, no one adjusted my crown, sir. God gave me my crown. It was never adjusted nor removed, and it will be no longer removed or adjusted until the day he calls me home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us. Colleague. Colleagues, our colleague, Councilmember Hyman, had a personal matter to attend to today and requires an excused absence. So I'm going to ask for a motion to grant our colleague that.
Second.
I had a motion from Councilmember Freeman and a second from Councilmember Caballero. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, Councilmember Hyman has an excused absence, and our best wishes to her. At this time, I'm going to, I think we can dispense with the pulled items before our presentations. I'm going to try at least, rather expediently. If not, we'll pivot. But we have item number 5, has been pulled. Underutilized business compliance performance audit, September 2023. And Mr. Walter Jackson, representing the Durham Affairs on the Committee of Black People, has pulled that item and wishes to speak. Chairman Jackson, good to see you, sir. Good afternoon. If you'll come up and just state your name for the record, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, City Manager Page, City Clerk, City Attorney. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to express some thoughts on behalf of the Durham Committee on the Affairs of Black People with regard to the audit of the Underutilized Business Compliance Program. Our team who reviewed this matter was not available to attend today, so they sent me the second team to stand in for them to present our concerns. The language that I use may be different from the language that they would have used, but they did give me some cheat sheet notes to share with you. So accordingly, here are some of our concerns. The city conducted a performance audit to assess the city's Equal Business Opportunity Program and Small Local Business Enterprise Program. Based on the findings of this audit, we believe that city departments are giving lip service to attaining both the goals set forth in this audit, as well as ensuring that contractors hire locally and aspire to meet our workforce diversity goals. City departments fail to make even rudimentary attempts at implementing the EBOP and SLBE programs. The list of resources to fund minority and women-owned businesses does not include the Durham Black Chamber of Commerce, Durham Business and Professional Chain, National Institute of Minority Economic Development, the North Carolina Historically Underutilized Business Office, or the Triangle Board of Realtors, just to name a few. Item 13 on this agenda, the 505 project, is a perfect example of what has become routine for the General Services Department in requiring 0 MUBE and 0 MUBE requirements when 4 out of the 6 applicants are from out of state. Reason dictates that they will have to hire subcontractors to develop this property. The Durham Committee supports the recommendations of the audit and further recommends that the RFQs and RFPs of General Services, Community Development Department, Transportation and Parks and Recreations be reviewed for the past 3 fiscal years to determine what impediments stand in their way of accomplishing the goals. Seeing that I'm running out of time, I will say thank you again for this opportunity, and I reserve the right to revise and extend my comments on Monday evening. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for being with us today. Colleagues, our friends from UNRBA are here, and I know we have 2 pulled items, but as a courtesy, I'm going to well, it's courtesy, and we would normally have our presentations first, but I'm going to now turn to item number 17, Upper Neuse River Basin Association Consensus Principles 2 for the revised Falls Lake Nutrient Management Strategy, and welcome our friends to give the presentation at this time.
So I'm going to introduce, I'm Michelle Woolfolk with the Public Works Department. I'm one of the team of members who, from the city, attend the UNRBA. And I have with me Forrest Westall, who's the Executive Director. And for some reason, the presentation just disappeared off the screen. So give me 1 second. Should go ahead and get started. How did I have it up on the screen? You don't. The folks in the room. Pull it up. Okay. It's all right. But go ahead. Can you see it on your monitor? How are you going to enlarge it? Ah, it's there. All right. It just showed up.
That's it?
That's it.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I am the Executive Director of the Upper Neuse River Basin Association. I took that position in January of 2012, and so coming up on 11 years with the UNRBA, and I am grateful for the opportunity to serve the UNRBA, the City of Durham, and all of our membership. So I'm here today to reach a point of tremendous achievement. We have been studying this lake and this watershed for over 10 years now, and through your funding and the funding of our other members, we've been able to develop the best scientific and evaluation of any reservoir and watershed in the state of North Carolina. So I am glad to be able to summarize that today. As I'm sure most of you know, we have a very diverse membership in the UNRBA. It is the upper portion of the watershed, which includes portions of these jurisdictions. The City of Durham has been a tremendous partner in this and provided a lot of leadership. I want to call out, Michelle was here to introduce me. Michelle's the chair of our Path Forward Committee. Her input and expertise, particularly in the modeling area and experience, has been essential. Reggie Hicks, who's been also a very active member, has been extremely helpful. Sandy Wilbur has been there, and Don O'Toole has been an extremely helpful person, providing a lot of assistance above and beyond the duty. So I appreciate the City of Durham. But we do have up to the watershed in Roxborough, all the way down to Raleigh and Wake County. As we all know, this reservoir was controversial when it was first proposed, and it continues to have concerns. The lake, as you all know, is the main water supply for the city of Raleigh. Over 500,000 people use this lake for potable water after treatment by the city. It is distributed and used by them. The city of Raleigh is very pleased with their water. We've talked with them, and they're satisfied and very glad that they have this source. It's been a good source for them. And it minimizes downstream flooding. The Corps of Engineers cited this project for flooding. Based on the folks in the lower part of the Neuse and Kinston and other areas, flooding was a problem, and so Falls Lake was sited and constructed and put into service in the early 1980s. So it is a relatively young reservoir. It was not designed necessarily for water supply, but it has become an absolutely essential water supply to the city of Raleigh. And as we all know, we need to look out after our watersheds. City of Durham gathers water from this watershed as well, and so the things that we're doing is going to help all of the water in this watershed. Protects water quality downstream. It releases water during low flow conditions, and that helps the river's habitat and other things, and it provides that habitat. It is also a great recreational resource in the region. The current framework and the rules that were passed in 2011 were extremely restrictive. This is the most restrictive set of rules in the state of North Carolina, probably in the Southeast and maybe in the country. It has required a tremendous amount of reduction of nutrients. Because of this, through the leadership of Durham, Raleigh, and others, the first set of consensus principles were issued in 2010 prior to the issuance of these rules. And those guided the rules to develop it into two sections, Stage 1 and Stage 2. Stage 1 would be implemented, but Stage 2 would be reevaluated. And that's why I'm here today. We have been in the process of reevaluating that, and we have been coming up with kinds of guidance that we have. These rules are not, the Stage 2 requirements are not achievable. They're not technologically achievable, they're not financially achievable, and they will not have the desired effect that the Division of Water Resources and the Environmental Management Commission indicated. We've learned a lot since these rules were developed and since the state provided the guidance for those. Stage 1 is being fully implemented. Great thanks to all of the jurisdictions, including the city of Durham, who have been implementing the new development rules since 2012. All land in this watershed with a half an acre or greater disturbed has to do a stormwater evaluation. That is managed by the city in its jurisdictions, managed by the counties and other towns and cities in their jurisdictions. That program has been holding the line on increasing nutrients in this watershed. Obviously, if you're concerned about nutrients, you want to make sure you don't add any more. So the new development rules were an important part of that. Agriculture has met their requirements as well, installing best management practices and managing their lands. We are fortunate, at least in terms of pollution and other things, that we don't have large-scale agriculture in this watershed. It is small-scale, small farms, a lot of pasture land, some small animal operations, grazing operations. But one of the things that folks in the whole county, and I'm sure everybody's concerned about, is the contraction of agriculture in this watershed. Our study and evaluation of land use shows that agriculture has reduced, production in agriculture has reduced from 2006 by 44%. That basically means that almost 45% of the agriculture that was in productive land in 2006 is no longer doing that. And that's one of the reasons that they've met their requirements by attrition. The wastewater treatment plant, City of Durham, has been a leader in meeting their nutrient requirements for nitrogen and phosphorus. Hillsborough and the South Granville Water and Sewer Authority have achieved theirs. We have seen tremendous reductions in the wastewater treatment plants. And existing development. Durham has been a tremendous leader in existing development, trying to offset the impacts of land that was in development before 2006 is a huge challenge. As you can imagine, all of that development didn't get planned to put in a stormwater control measure. So trying to get those on the sites are very difficult. The city has installed many, hundreds of projects in its jurisdiction to minimize the impact of existing development. And so there's been a lot of accomplishment with that. And the UNRBA developed the interim alternative implementation approach to meet the stage 1 requirements, with the state approved and the Environmental Management Commission approved, which is based on investment in the watershed, building projects that benefit water quantity and water quality, providing the opportunity for jurisdictions to know what their responsibility is and to make those investments. So that's been an extremely beneficial aspect. Looking at the stage 2 requirements, agriculture, 40%, the stage 2 requirements require 40% reduction in nitrogen for all projects and sources that were in existence in 2006, 77% of phosphorus. That, as I said, is impossible. Agriculture has met theirs through attrition, but existing development in this watershed, there is no way you're going to reduce the nutrient input from all developed land that was in existence in 2006 to bring it down by 40% in 77. And that's a part of our baseline as we went through our study process. So the UNRBA provided and decided to provide a very strong science-based approach to water quality management. We want to know the answers. We don't want to just say we're against something. We don't want to say that we won't follow the rules. We want to be able to say why and what we can do and what the effect of that would be. If you're going to invest money in environmental control, you need to know it's going to address the issue you're trying to work. So that's why that we have done that. We've also worked on a collaborative process to do this for resource management. We've worked with our stakeholders, the Department of Environmental Quality, Division of Water Resources. As you all will remember, the General Assembly established the North Carolina Collaboratory. They created a research group at the funding at UNC has now become the North Carolina Collaboratory, and they studied Jordan Lake first, and they've been studying Falls Lake for the last 4 years. We have worked conjunctively with them to share data and to develop our evaluation. Some of the key findings from this are pretty eye-opening. This is not a developed watershed. This is a watershed that is mainly undeveloped. Almost 60% of the watershed is forested. I know this is a checkerboard forestry situation, but there's a lot of forest land in this watershed. In addition, there's wetlands, and there's land that is in fallow conditions that's under what you would call succession. It's becoming forest. It's no longer farmed, and it's growing back up. So if you look at it, 75% of this watershed is unmanaged. Nobody's putting nutrients on it. Nobody's using it for production of agriculture. It is not providing any kind of managed activity. But this land is not a zero impact situation. Nutrients come off of this land. And about 50% of the nitrogen and 50% of the phosphorus comes from unmanaged lands. The 50% that remains is coming from managed activity. Development in this watershed is dense development, like in the downtown area of Durham, is only 1.5% of the watershed. Developed area is only about 14% total, but most of it is not intense development. So we have very limited capability to deal with that. The soil store nutrients, the sediments in the bottom of the lake store nutrients, and the good thing that we all need to remember is this lake is meeting its uses. It's a water supply, swimming, boating. It's being used for all of the activities it's supposed to be used. I was working with the Division of Environmental Management then, back in 1970, 76. We studied the lake, and we said the lake was going to be eutrophic and you couldn't use it. Thankfully, we were wrong. The lake is being used, and the lake is meeting its uses. And we need to hold on to that. Obviously, this lake is not going to disappear. It's going to be there. And it is a tremendous visual observation. Everybody does an inspection of Falls Lake when they drive across 85. They look right at it, and they see what it looks like. And so it's going to continue. I said, Raleigh thinks their water is really great. Well, as long as it stays that way, you won't hear too many complaints. But if there are problems, we need to deal with those. So the best thing to do is to continue management on these. We need a revised nutrient management strategy. Stage 2 is not achievable. And plus, we can't make this lake meet the standard. In this lake, in areas above Highway 50, in this lake, you will never, ever meet 40 micrograms per liter of chlorophyll A. The standard is not achievable. And that is a part of our conclusions in terms of what we're trying to do. So we need to fit the management program to the intended effort to protect this reservoir and to improve water quality. And so we want to be able to do that. We also think a watershed organization that the UNRBA or similar organization needs to continue to help coordinate those activities. So, and stakeholder input has been essential to this. We've involved environmental groups, local governments, state agencies, agriculture. We've been working with them. So we've involved all of the people in the watershed. That's another thing we have seen. It's better to work together. It's also better to have these programs managed at a local level instead of a centralized level. The people on the ground here in this watershed, Durham and the other jurisdictions know their area, and they know what can be done. So we believe that's an important part of it. So the principles for a revised strategy, we provided you with our document, which is a long document about what the best concepts and principles are, and we provided the consensus principles too to allow for cost-effective options to promote conservation and to focus on watershed health. The city of Durham is involved in Jordan Lake because you share both watersheds. You are involved with the One Water efforts there. This is a one water approach. Let's look at it from a health standpoint. Whatever we do in this watershed needs to benefit everybody in the watershed, not just those downstream, but everybody that's there. And we think the investment-based program will do that. The 16 consensus principles, very quickly, we all agree in the UNRBA, and this was passed by our board at the September meeting, and we need to protect Falls Lake. We need to do what we can to manage it. We need to be proactive. We need revised rules now. We've developed this data. The data was collected between 2014 and 2018. We need to use this science as we have it to adjust these rules now. We need to focus on watershed health, as I said earlier. We need to incorporate adaptive management. That's a term that's being thrown around a lot. Basically means you just look at where you are, what you've done, and how you need to adjust that. Right now, our consensus principle is recommending every 5 years to look at it and then have a big look in 25 years. This is not a sprint. This isn't a 100-meter dash. This is a marathon. Dealing with this lake and making these actions in the watershed are going to take a long period of time. It needs to be an investment-based and joint compliance program for existing development. And we need to provide the opportunity for other participants, DOT, agriculture, other institutions in the watershed to cooperate together. We also don't want the division and the state to say, you need to control runoff from natural areas. That doesn't make any sense. How can you ask the jurisdictions in this watershed on an unfunded mandate to treat runoff from forested areas? Doesn't make any sense. So we believe that that's not a necessary component of it. And land conservation is extremely important. The city of Durham has been a great participant in conserving land. Even though, forest land do produce nutrients, they produce less nutrients than developed land. So it is good to promote conservation. It is a voluntary program, no forcing property owners to do that. Gives the opportunity for property owners to set aside their land. In some cases, it allows them to hold on to their land, because if they sell the easements, then that allows them to do that. We need to continue to have a watershed organization that coordinates all this. The state of North Carolina has one person that is guiding the Falls Lake program. It is better for the jurisdictions in this watershed to take an active role in the management of that. We need to continue implementing the new development rules. We need some refinements in that, but again, as I said earlier, you need to control the new loading that's being added. We need to include requirements for new expanded wastewater treatment plants. City of Durham is going to need additional capacity for wastewater. It has to be there. And so there needs to be a provision that will allow Durham to expand its plant when it needs to. We need to optimize treatment performance at the facilities. We do not recommend any additional levels of treatment than what the point sources are already done. Point sources make up less than 10% of the loading in this watershed. It doesn't make sense to spend what's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars to get a small reduction. So we need to make sure that we do stay on top of the operation. We're going to learn a lot of things and improve requirements there. We need to allow investment credits for addressing poorly performing on-site wastewater treatment system. 50% of the people in this watershed are served by septic tanks and drain field. Thankfully, the impact from septic tanks and drain fields, as we have studied, is less than 1% on the watershed. So that's good. But when they're failing, we need to be able to get a credit for that, and we need to be able to either connect them to a system or improve the treatment from these on-site systems. We need to avoid separate management plans for impoundments. The city of Durham is very concerned and interested, as Michelle will always remind me, of your watersheds. You have lakes that you get your water from, and you would like to see those protected, and we agree, but we don't necessarily think it should be different at this point. It may need to be different in the future, but right now we need to just have one management program for the whole watershed. If the city of Durham or the folks in your watershed install a project in your watershed, that will be beneficial to both the city, the watershed, and Falls Lake. And that's really what we're talking about, is being more inclusive in terms of all of those projects that we do. And we need to expand the list of eligible activities. The IAIA program, Interim Alternative Implementation Approach, includes land conservation for a credit, but we need to add additional ways to do that. As we learn, well, there's things we can do in this watershed that will benefit water quantity, that is keeping the flow. As climate change continues, flows are going to drop in our streams under low flow conditions, and we're going to get very intensive storms, and it's going to be a shift. And so conserving water is good. Protecting the watershed from nutrients and other pollutants is also good. And so we want to be equitable. We want to make sure that we are fair in the application of these programs, both to the larger entities and jurisdictions and the smaller entities and jurisdictions. I was in Person County on Monday and talked with the Person County commissioners, and they had some questions, but they unanimously approved these consensus principles. They passed them, and they said that they didn't feel like they were a big contribution, but I told them, you are a contribution, and you need to stay at the table and do these things. And so we've got cooperation across the board, and we need to be equitable in that. The city of Raleigh has been an extremely important partner, and they've put money into this. We need to continue to keep them at the table. One of the reasons the Falls program has been so effective is because Raleigh, who uses the water downstream, has put money back into the process. In the Jordan, it's been less of that, and that's why Greensboro has been fighting these rules. In the Jordan, the new development requirements have not been put in place. The rules were passed in Jordan before the ones in Falls. And Falls, because of the cooperation and work of the jurisdictions here, have put those in effect. That's commendable. We need to evaluate chlorophyll A. As I said earlier, we'll never meet the standard, but we're meeting the uses. The most important thing in water quality from 47 years of experience is to protect the water quality, to protect the users, to protect the environment, to protect the ecology, to do all of those things. And that lake is providing all of those things now. And so we're grateful for that, but we have a standard that's not being met, and that continues to drive unreasonable requirements. And the reality is we do need to manage this watershed, but we don't need to be throwing money at a problem that doesn't exist. Complying with the standard is not possible, and it's not necessary to maintain the uses. So we've looked at all of the different jurisdictions, and certainly the city of Durham has community goals and objectives. We have looked at that in relationship to the comprehensive plan for Durham and have compared it to what the UNRBA is recommending. We believe there's good synthesis with that. We believe that there's crossover and agreement on most of those. So we believe that the consensus principles are consistent with the city's stated goals and the things that they would like to accomplish. So the next steps is we're trying to get all of these, we're trying to get all of our jurisdictions to adopt a resolution supporting the consensus principles. We want to be able to go to the state and EPA and be able to negotiate with the power of all of the jurisdictions in the watershed. I'm here before you today to encourage you to do that. I know today's a work session. You won't be looking at that today, but I do place that before you all for consideration. And I know that Michelle and Reggie and Don know all about what those consensus principles are, and they can speak to those. DWR is supposed to start under the statute. They're supposed to start rule development in 2024. I think we can beat the rule goal that they've set of 2027. I would like to see the rules adopted. I may not be working much longer for that, but I would like to see those rules adopted. This has been an extremely gratifying process for me in my career. This is a great public policy issue. Just sitting and listening to the commissions and the city councils and the town council, you got so much on your plate, so many things, so many demands. And this is important, but it needs to be fit in with all the other demands that you have. And we believe that the consensus principles and the goals we're trying to achieve allows us to be balanced with the other things that local governments are doing in this watershed. The original cost of these estimated rules was $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. That's a huge amount for this size of watershed. And so we believe that if we were going to accomplish some great restoration, then maybe that's justified. But in this particular case, we need to make sure that the investments we're making fit the need to manage this reservoir and watershed for the long term. And I think that what the consensus principles does is give us support for negotiating what these rules will look like. You're also won't be committing yourself to anything. We're still going to work on the rules, and we're going to use these consensus principles to guide us. But until the state develops draft rules, the UNRBA and the City of Durham and others will not have a position until we see what those rules look like. So that'll be important to remember as well. So this is a list of our additional information. We have thousands of pages of information. Michelle's looked at most of them, and we've read them and edited them. There's a lot more information there. If you need something, to go to sleep at night, you can open those up and you can read those, and it'll put you right to bed. But it is good science and it is good research and it is a good thing to do. But we've tried to distill those down into 16 consensus principles. I appreciate your time today. Be glad to answer any questions if I can.
Mr. Director, thank you so much. It's good to see you. Thanks for this excellent, excellent presentation. I'm going to now yield to my honorable colleagues who may have any questions or comments. I look forward to the principles coming before us, and I certainly plan on voting to adopt them. I want to fully associate myself with the power of regional cooperation. And earlier we talked about bolstering our mutual aid agreement with the state. Things just work better. We work across city lines and regional lines. So thank you so much for an excellent presentation.
Appreciate it.
Our best wishes to our friends at UNRBA, please.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you. Colleagues, we will now turn to item 13, which has been pulled. Yeah. Redevelopment of 505 West Chapel Hill Street update, and I have several cards, and I'm going to invite those speakers to come up. Reverend Heather Rodriguez, Rick Carson, and then Ann Rebeck, and we'll start with Reverend Rodriguez. So good to see you. If you just give us your name, you'll have 3 minutes.
Great. Council members, Mayor Pro Tem, my name is Heather Rodriguez, and I'm the lead pastor at Duke Memorial United Methodist Church, which is located right across the street from the 505 site. I have a quick question for you all. Do you all have children, nieces or nephews, or friends who by chance dress up for Halloween? Anybody? Yeah? So I read this quote this morning from a pastor about Halloween, and it says this: Halloween is a day when we get it right. Strangers come to us beautiful, ugly, odd, or scary, and we accept them without question, compliment them, treat them kindly, and give them good things. Why don't we live like that? It's a beautiful invitation to live like Halloween, to live in ways that treat people kindly and create ways for them to get good things. Today I speak on behalf of the Clergy Caucus of Durham Can, representing thousands of Durham citizens, and on behalf of 6 organizations who have come together over the last 3 months. Durham Can, Duke Memorial, the Coalition on Affordable Housing and Transit, the Durham Committee, People's Alliance, and the Durham chapter of the NAACP. Together we've asked, how might the last significant publicly owned piece of property in downtown be used for good things for all Durham people? We endorsed a vision statement that we've shared with you and city staff, and are excited that many of you share our vision for 505. We're disappointed that the draft RFP does not reflect the shared vision. It calls for more of the same, a hotel and high-end office space, when what we really need is housing, and in particular, as much affordable housing as possible. Our organizations and constituents feel strongly that the city does not need, and we should not use, publicly owned property for a high-end hotel or more Class A office or lab space. Yes, 505 should include some retail space, but the need is for a reasonably priced grocery store and local businesses that serve all of Durham, not just those with high incomes. What we need is affordable office space for service organizations, nonprofits, profits, and even small businesses who struggle to find affordable housing, affordable office space. Today we ask you to direct city staff to rework the 505 RFP to Halloween it, so to speak, so that it might be used for good things for all of Durham's people. The RFP should make it clear that developers who maximize the number of affordable housing units, not just meet a minimum of 80 units, would be scored high, and developers that address the need for affordable retail and office space will also be scored high. Let's use this publicly owned land for good things for all people. Let's Halloween this thing. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Reverend. Good to see you. Rick Carson. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with us. If you'll state your name, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yep. Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, council members, for the chance to address you. I'm also speaking on behalf of the consortium of organizations that Reverend Rodriguez mentioned, and we would just note that today is your chance as a council to give feedback to staff about ways the first draft of the RFP can and we think should be improved. Specifically, just to highlight what Reverend Rodriguez said, this is the last significant piece of publicly owned land in downtown Durham, and we feel that you have an opportunity as a council to make the right decisions about this property on our behalf. So we would ask you specifically around the RFP to direct staff in 2 areas. One is affordable housing. We'd like you to indicate a desire in the RFP, a desire for proposals which include a substantial number of new housing units at this site. 2, require that a minimum percentage of all new residential units be affordable at 60% AMI in perpetuity. And 3, and probably most importantly, indicate, as the Reverend said, that proposals that do that provide significantly above 80 units will be scored higher than proposals that aren't. That will encourage developers to do that. In the area of office space, last fall, as you know, the city commissioned a downtown market assessment by HRNA, and that noted that the market for new office space was soft and that the office vacancy rate had nearly doubled during the pandemic, and it wasn't clear when that situation was going to improve. And to put it simply, downtown Durham already has plenty of market rate office space and lab space. And moreover, the market assessment did not call for a new hotel. And we would just note the new hotels have not had a problem finding space through the private market in downtown. Staff, in our last meeting with staff, they've been terrific at listening to our thoughts. They indicated that the RFP would call for 150,000 square feet of space. That number is now 250,000 square feet and includes a request for a new hotel. We don't see any market-based reason for devoting any additional substantial space at the 505 site. So we would ask you as council to direct staff to reduce the total amount of office space in the RFP to 100,000 square feet or less. This will obviously allow more housing to be built. And secondly, we'll hope that you'll indicate in the RFP that the council hopes to work with the developer to bring a neighborhood grocery store, an affordable one, and affordable space for nonprofit offices into the proposed development. And I would just note that these changes that we're suggesting to the RFP are in line with the priorities that you set as a council earlier this year. They also speak to the real needs of downtown Durham's residents. We hope you'll focus on housing and affordable housing as the highest and best use of this publicly owned property. Thanks.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us. Ann, good afternoon. Good to see you. Thank you for being with us. If you just state your name, you have 3 minutes.
Ann Rebeck. I'm also here with the consortium of organizations that have been working on this. And I'm sort of the closer here because we are in the middle of election season and we're often framing things as winning and losing. You have just heard from people who maybe during this season, not people, but organizations who during this season maybe don't usually work so closely together. And yet here we are. And what we're representing in this moment are many, many Zoom calls, many emails flying back and forth amongst a group of people who have a value that they share. And I guess I just want to say here that affordable housing in Durham really needs a win. We need a win because the market approach and capitalism has been winning a lot in Durham right now. And so I feel like this is a chance, and as the previous speakers mentioned, maybe one of the last chances for affordable housing to get that win. So I'm just hoping that you can help us together to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Those are all the cards I have for folk who wanted to sign up on this item. It is before the council. I'll now yield to any colleagues who may have questions or comments for staff about this important issue. Council, I'm sorry? No, it's not. No, it's just, we're just advancing the RFQ. Councilmember Williams.
Yeah, just a question for staff. So between the RFQ and RFP process, exactly how much flexibility do we have, considering how fast market trends are changing? And also, just to add to that question, how, I'm assuming that the RFQ is not as prescriptive, right? This is capability stage for the applicants, is that right?
Exactly. First of all, good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, Madam City Manager, and Assistant City Attorney. My name is Tara Nichols from General Services. And to answer your question, we're looking at a time frame of about 3 to 6 months from the time that we issue the RFP till we get a final proposal to go forward with a development agreement. But as it relates to the RFQ, it is exactly what you're saying, totally prescriptive. And just going forward, when we get to the next stage that we're asking for direction on today, it will be more restrictive.
Okay, and I only asked that because literally since the last time we've talked, I mean, things are changing so quickly, and I just want to make sure we aren't tying our hands from being able to adjust even in the smallest ways.
Yes, and another reason why we're here is also asking that we're able to modify the draft RFP, because that's why it's called the draft. It's still a work in progress, and we're looking forward to the opportunity to adjust that so that we can get the best proposals with the best options for Durham based off of the priorities that you guys have given, that the city council members have given us going forward.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if any of my colleagues are going to share. I would add that I do think we need a grocery store downtown. I think we talked about that. In regards to office space, we have a lot of smaller office space. We have smaller office space capacity that's going to be opening up soon, considering the work, more folks are working at home. That's anecdotal. I'd like to have some hard data on that, but that's, you guys are the experts. So if we are just following the demands, if it's not as much demand, then therefore we should adjust to that. But I don't want to just make hard decisions on assumptions. So these are the things I'd like to look at. We definitely need a grocery store downtown. Obviously, we all talked about housing. But at the end of the day, I want to also make sure that it economically makes sense, what we're trying to do. And that we can be as creative as possible around that. So in regards of, and I've spoken to some of the community members as well, I keep using the word prescriptive. I don't want to be too prescriptive to where we're not being able to do what we really need to do about those smaller office spaces that are going to be coming open. That may be great spaces for nonprofits, and that's something to consider. Not saying we don't have to have it on site, but I don't want to say we must have it on site when we're going to have so much capacity elsewhere. And that may give us more opportunity to build more housing or more retail that could help offset some of the type of housing that we actually put in place. So being able to meet our values and make happen what we're asking for, but driven, where it makes economic sense to where we're not putting folks in a financial harm.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my question is, the folks who have advocated today and have been speaking with staff, how do we create an open enough RFP to hit the kind of advocacy we're hearing? So we're not being, okay, we're saying a minimum of 80 units, but in the past, we have provided more points for the folks who give us more affordable units, right? So like, how do we structure the RFP in a way that hits the targets we want? And then I have a second question to that, which is, in the original conversation, and this is happening, there's like two parallel conversations happening, one of which is the Museum of History, right? And so that the 505 West Chapel Hill Street has been identified as a potential site. I think a test fit has to be done for that to happen. And so how does that happen, right? How do we fold that into this process? And is it possible or not? And yeah, thank you.
Okay. As it relates to your first question about including some of the concerns by the affordable housing advocates, we're taking all that into consideration in modifying the RFP. Like I said before, it is a draft, and we're looking at the priorities that have been given to us by this city council as it relates to affordable housing being the #1 priority. As it relates to the museum space, as part of your priorities, that would fit one of the priorities that you all had given direction on before, and so that is something that is a possibility, but once again, it's kind of preemptive to say what exactly we'll receive as it relates to proposals, but that does fit into the priorities that you have stated in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about the rationale behind the minimum commercial space at 250,000 square feet?
That is based off of the market analysis that was done, yes, in like October, November of 2022. And so I will just defer to our consultant for that.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Council. Thank you for your question, Council Member. So we conducted the initial market analysis back in 2022, and in more recent conversations, we've had this same question come up about what's the right commercial component. And so we've taken a more recent look at the market as we've talked about market conditions change. And so as we've looked at evolving market conditions, still believe that the office market is fairly soft and would not by itself be the right prescription or the right requirement that we require 250,000 feet of just commercial or just office space. The inclusion of hotel is not a requirement, and we're not saying that we expect this from the development community. We want to open the doors to the possibility of hotel as a way to, bolster the commercial component. The site is currently zoned and has a development agreement applicable that requires a minimum of 250,000 square feet. But from purely the market standpoint, when you look at lab space and how lab space has performed within downtown Durham, it's actually done quite well, specifically the newer spaces that have come online over the last few years. And so we believe that lab as a potential use on site, as a commercial component, one of the consistent priorities we've seen now through 3 stages of this RFP process, has been that we've tried to maintain this sort of mixed-use element, mixed-use identity for this project. So we wanted to ensure that there is a commercial element that continues on, and that would be supported by a lab program, and we see this as a strength not just locally in Durham, but also more so from a regional perspective. This is a strength of the Raleigh-Durham Triangle region. So in terms of including commercial and making sure that there's a significant component of that, we believe lab to be a significant portion. But we've also opened the doors to things like retail, to things like hotel, and really we're open to any ideas that the development community could push forward on what a commercial component could look like. And so, the museum, the Durham Museum is an example of that. We're open to lots of ideas that the community could bring forward.
Thank you. And either of you, I guess, could answer this. If we were to reduce that minimum of 250,000 square feet, what do you think would be the lowest we could go and still have like a viable mixed-use development?
Traditionally, this is the third try at redeveloping.
Would you get into the mic, please? Would you pull the mic to you, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not set up for short people, but that's okay. In the past two attempts, we're still in that range that was presented previously in the other two attempts to redevelop 505. And when you talk about a floor on that or the lowest we could go, that yet remains to be seen because of the simple fact that we don't know what will be presented and how that will pan out for that particular site. Did you want to?
Right. It seems like in the RFP that we're requiring a minimum of 250,000 though, right? So, could we go lower and still achieve a viable mixed-use development?
So there's, with any of these uses, there are trade-offs, right? And I think in a previous memo, we talked about what those trade-offs look like. And so, the likely highest and best use of the entire site, purely in terms of development value, would come from market rate residential, right? We see this all over Durham, and we obviously are aware of the fact that this is not what the vision for this site, as we've sort of worked towards for the past 4 years at this point. That's not what we want the site to be. We can lower the commercial component to any certain number of square feet. I think it's more of a question of when we think about this site and some of the goals that this site represents, and what we've been working to. Part of this is to achieve some of the economic development goals that the city had established years ago in a strategic plan. I think it's a question of what space do you feel comfortable moving forward with? What degree of mixed use, besides just the residential component, would you like to see included on site? And so I think there's lots of different paths to viable development on the commercial side, and any number of these uses could be combined to create that type of positive feasibility. But it's really up to, I think, council. We've put forward 250,000 square feet in part because we see market justification for that in the different uses. If you think it's too high and that poses a risk that the city doesn't necessarily want to take, we can scale that back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I think what I'm most concerned about with even trying to think about lowering that commercial space is that there's not a lot of commercial downtown that could be utilized in a way that brings people in. And so I'm mindful that when we talk about affordable housing, it's not just simply the housing, it's also where you can find jobs and walkability to the job. And so I can appreciate the minimum of 250,000 square feet. I do want to make sure that I lift up that it's important that we do figure out how to, I was hoping to see something that separated it out a little bit more, honestly, because I think the housing should probably move forward now, and maybe the commercial aspects could probably hold off, because I don't know that this is the market to try to push on that. But that's mainly just my thoughts.
You want to respond?
I think it'd be a very feasible idea and plan in redeveloping 505 if that's done in phases anyway. And so based on what you're saying, that sounds like something that would be a reasonable assumption in redeveloping that site. Did you want to ask?
Yeah, thank you. I would agree with that sentiment. It is part of what's already written in the RFP is that the expectation would be that affordable housing would be delivered earlier on. And since it's part of a mixed income building anyhow, you would deliver, the housing first. When we think about where we are, we need to carry out this RFP. There are negotiations, approvals from council. We're probably at least a year and a half, 2 years away from shovels being anywhere close to being in the ground. So buildings aren't built for another 4 years. We're going to be looking at a series of different market dynamics, and maybe commercial looks a lot different at that time. So I think thinking about the long-term timeline of what development would look like, I think we have our indicators based on what we've seen so far. We could certainly project into the future. Nobody before 2020 would have seen what has happened to office and working from home, not to the extent that we've seen. And so how do we continue to react to those types of dynamics as a society is we don't know. What we do know is that housing is going to be important continuing on, not just in Durham, but in every city in America. And this is what we're seeing in every city in America, a shortage of affordable housing. So the potential to bring in housing in an early stage, is already sort of recognized in the RFP. It would be a major point of emphasis in any negotiations we would carry forward with a developer when we get to that stage.
Colleagues, thank you so much for your excellent questions and observations. I want to thank the staff as well for bringing us to this point. I do just want to say a couple of things. I think it's important for us to remember the tick-tock of how we got here. The reason why this discussion is still active is because the first group, the deal fell through. We would have already been developing this project already. So the discussion was reopened. And I want to also thank the consortium of groups that are before us. Full disclosure, I'm a member of almost all of them. So I honor their work and find their work very important. But I think there are two really important principles that we as a council need to remember here. One is fidelity with the public, and two, there's just a management principle as well. This RFQ is reflective of what we're doing right now. We had a pretty robust public engagement. That's how we got the principles, and that's what the RFQ is based upon. And I remember our last conversation, I think at the end I turned to y'all and said, are we sure that we want to go ahead and float these as the principles, that we're finished with this discussion? I think one of the dangers, one of the pitfalls is that the groups that we have now before us have responded, have sent in their qualifications based upon what we've said already. There's a danger that if we tweak it so much that it becomes unrecognizable, that the folk that are before us now are no longer qualified to do what we've asked them to do because their requests, their responses were based upon what we communicated. The first thing in terms of fidelity with the public, this item is for us basically to advance the RFQ to receiving proposals. The groups that are before us today are highly representative, but the historic folk aren't here. The folk who had bad memories about it being a police station and think the building should be torn down aren't here. The folk who advocated for a robust remembrance of Hayti and West End aren't here. And my point is that I think we have to be careful not to reopen the engagement process without trumpeting that to the public and allowing the whole public to be a part of that, that process once again. The good news is that this is not our last opportunity to take a crack at this. When the proposals come back, we still have an opportunity to look at what these developers have sent, what they're proposing. And I heard a statement that actually resonates with me. I think one of our friends said that what these groups are recommending comport with the values and things that we've trumpeted or already promulgated. I agree, which is why I'm comfortable with allowing those things to go forward and see what comes back. I don't think there's any cognitive dissonance between what's being asked for or any violence done to the principles that we've already arrived at in cooperation and communication with a full public. We have not broadcast today as full engagement to revisit the work we've already done that gave us this RFQ in the first place. And if we're going to do that, I think we need to give the whole public an opportunity to do that. I think I want to keep faith with what we represented. And what we represented was that first discussion yielded those principles. Those principles informed that RFQ, and that RFQ would inform the proposals that come before us, and we look again. And we'll still have opportunity to tweak. We can say then, you know what, too much office space, or you know what, we want more housing. But the work that's already been done managerially, I think it's important that we've got sunken costs in this process already. We've engaged the public, and we can engage the public again. I don't think this is the appropriate juncture to do so. And since we're in agreement that the principles are reflective of the things that we hold dear in our values, my recommendation would be to keep fidelity with the process that we advertise to our constituents, send this RFQ forward, get the proposals back, and then take a look and see what we get, just like we did last time. And if we don't like them, we can send it back to the drawing board at that time. or we can say more of this, less of that. We like this one, we like that one. I'm just not really, this is not the time, I don't think, to do that, because we have not said to the entire public, let's come and revisit. Let's come and tweak this RFP. And I think that's important. Notwithstanding the gravitas and impact or representative nature of these organizations, they have incredible gravitas. They have incredible impact and incredible reach. But there were some more interest at part of this discussion. And we didn't tell them that we were going to be going back and tweaking. So I want to keep faith with them. So my recommendation would be to, keep fidelity with what we said, bring the proposals back, and let's gather again. Let's come together again. And it won't be too late to celebrate Halloween at that time, because we can still look at those proposals, and I like that. We can still look at those proposals and tweak them at that time. I want to thank the staff for the incredible amount of work that they've done for bringing us this far in the process. Thank these residents and organizations for keeping us honest and keeping us engaged and reminding us of what's important to us. I do have one question about and it's a pretty diverse group of respondents that we have. I recognize some names, Accreditation is back, and Wynn. Are there some of the developers, are all, like Wynn we know is very adept at affordable housing, so I imagine they're not presenting a proposal that's comprehensive everything. Are there some of these developers that are representing themselves as giving a full plan for the property, or some of them are just piecemeal? And could you give us a sense of who's who?
Basically, we're going to be asking in the RFP, with your blessing, of course, that they look at the whole picture. In the RFP draft that we currently have, we're asking for them to give 2 scenarios. And we're also open to modifying the RFP to do that. The other thing is, as it relates to the actual development firms that have submitted RFQs, they also are aware of the fact that they have time to put together a team beyond what they've put together or sent in with the RFQ responses.
Right.
So to answer your question, it'll be a whole development that doesn't just address one aspect of what we're looking for, but a team of people that will be headed up by one of these companies that addresses the whole multi-use idea.
So somebody like Wynn, who, I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, who's not really known for like doing commercial development in their wheelhouse or hotels or anything like that, they would go out and put together a team
to add to what they currently have to address those needs.
Okay. All right, thank you. Again, I really can't say enough of the work. We've been at this for a minute, and this is clearly one of the most important pieces of real estate left in our city. It's really our last opportunity as a government, as a people, to kind of stamp our downtown. No disrespect, one city center is now the tallest building in our skyline. I don't know how long it will be. And all great cities, you can look at a picture and tell what city it is without the words on it. And I don't know what that's going to be for Durham, but I'd like us as a city, as a people, to really, really get this right and take the opportunity to stamp it, not leave it to corporate interests or whatever. Again, not in a pejorative sense, but so it really can't overstate how important this corner is. Affordable housing is clearly at the front, but I think that the work that's been done, the process that we've committed ourselves to as a council, should go forward. And again, we will have another opportunity to revisit all of this. But I think the work that's gone in, the sunken costs that have gone into this RFQ process, we need to move forward and see what comes back, and then start the discussion from there with something graphic in our hand and things we can actually point at and look at. That's it. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. So I would like to put this on GBA, because I do want to discuss more the possibility of making one change, which is to make the mixed-use development, like minimum square footage, more flexible, maybe a lower minimum or a range. I think that is not a change that would vastly alter what we have said that we, are putting out into the community, but could give the developers more flexibility and would give us more options. I don't want to have a minimum square footage that we end up getting back proposals and we think they all have too much office space. And at that point, I think it would be more difficult to change things. This does seem to me a better time to make small changes to the RFP before it actually goes out to developers. And while it's, before us as a draft, that's the only thing that I think I would be interested in changing. I think the minimum affordable housing number gives developers opportunity to provide us with much more affordable housing and more housing than that. But I worry that the minimum square footage for commercial will reduce the ability of developers to provide housing or open space or other things that I think we are now thinking about as more critical. Definitely want a viable mixed-use site that has plenty of opportunity for employment and for commercial. But I don't think that I want to require the proposals to meet that minimum 250.
Thank you, Councilmember. It'll be on GBA. Colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Caballero.
Yeah, I think so highlighting the affordability is great. I think moving forward, all 6 firms gives us the flexibility we need. I guess my thing, like with the lab space if we don't prioritize, at least in some way, our language of like what we actually want to see, then we're gonna get things like lab space. And quite frankly, that is counter to what we're trying to do on the corner. Lab space is dead space. It's not gonna add interactivity. There's so much other lab space coming online. It's one of the criticisms we're hearing from the folks at Northgate Park is that they want to turn so much of that into lab space, and that's not going to create the dynamic interface that we need. So I don't particularly want to highlight that. I get that from a market standpoint, that might make sense. But to your point, in 2 years, who knows? Like, then there's going to be a whole bunch of other lab space online. And then, I mean, like the reason we're tearing down all these malls is because at some point malls were great, and then we built too many of them. So, I just want to be really thoughtful about that, and then and really thinking through what we are hearing from community as to, yeah, we can phase it, we could encourage the residential to come online faster. I think that makes sense as well. But I don't want to tie our hands in the long run because we said yes to something that really isn't what we're hearing. To your point about I think with other spaces downtown and what we're trying to achieve, I just want to ensure that we're prioritizing the right mixed residential. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councilmember. I really appreciate that comment. Part of our analysis was accounting for what we know is coming online in the future in downtown as a sort of a submarket. So when we came up with those projections, that is already sort of keeping in mind the pipeline. But in addition to that, especially when it comes to lab, I mean, one of the reasons why, besides the market strength of it right now, is, a lab market is a little bit more conducive to people coming to work right now. And so, some work can be done virtually, but it's much easier to be in person. And so, I mean, really in that sense, we're thinking about activity. We're thinking about who comes to the site every day and who patronizes the businesses on the ground floor. And, I really like the idea of creating a baseline of MWBE tenanting, and that's something that we don't need to address as part of the Q and the P. We can do that in negotiations. And I think that this is especially where we are in the process with an RFP. It is, in my mind, a starting point for negotiations. It is, we have set these standards in place, tell us how you'll meet them, and then let's begin the conversation based on the ideas that are put forward. What are the firms we like the most? How can we start thinking about taking the ideas that they're presenting, molding it to what we're hearing from the public? And then, also as part of this, we're asking developers to sort of speak to their experience and engagement, because we expect that they will also conduct engagement to refine their vision. And then in addition to it, I want to make sure I don't forget this point. One of our baseline priorities is tax revenue. And so when we think about commercial space, one of the reasons why we want to include it is because we know it'll be a valuable source of long-term tax revenue to the city. And so that would create the services that could enable future housing investments or other infrastructure investments across the city. So we want to make sure that point's not lost in the midst of all of it. It is now the last priority, which is something that has shifted over time. So obviously, when we think about this and when we think about evaluating proposals, we know affordable housing is number one, and this comes number 6. But we also want to make sure that the city can take part in the site's success. And that's why I think especially that we've shifted now towards long-term revenues. Whatever the site becomes, we hope it will be successful and that the city can take part in that.
Thank you, and I appreciate you sharing where in the process there's going to be flexibility and negotiation.
Colleagues, anyone else? Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Stacy.
Stacy Poston, General Services Department. Just want a point of information. As we went through this development process, we rezoned this 4-acre parcel, and so we do have a development plan for this site, and there are some parameters illustrated in that development plan which indicate a base range of 250,000 to 450,000 square feet of commercial development for this site. So just as a point of information, that does exist. It does not preclude us or a development partner from rezoning the parcel to current parameters that are defined by council, but I just wanted to provide that as a point of information.
Very helpful, thank you. Colleagues, anyone else? All right, thank you so much for a great discussion on this, and to our community partners and friends and neighbors, thank you so much for your continued engagement. This is not a lock-in for us moving forward, but I'm glad to hear also the reminders of flexibility and the ability to still revisit. But I do want to also thank staff for the incredible amount of work that has gone on. We've been at this for a minute, and it looks like there's indeed light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you so much. All right, colleagues, we have a discussion on infrastructure bond, item number 7. That's a council item. I believe that's our last item of business today before receiving a report from our clerk. We do have a speaker also for this item, Tricia Smar, who I believe is online, has been patiently waiting. And then we will, I believe it's Councilmember Caballero who will start us off on the discussion on the bond.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, Ms. Smar is online for item number 7.
What did I say? Okay, all right. Okay, cool. She said it late. All right, is Ms. Smar available? Good afternoon, Tricia Smar. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes.
Good afternoon. Hi, thank you so much for being with us. If you'll just state your name, you'll have 3 minutes. We're on your item now, number 7, infrastructure bond.
I was actually hoping to go after Councilperson Caballero.
I'm sorry?
Could I go after Councilperson Javier Caballero?
Actually, we usually have our residents speak before the council engages in the conversation. Well, let me ask my colleague. Were you anticipating? Okay, now if you'd go now, and then we'll engage in the conversation, please. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. So my name is Tricia Smar. I'm a resident of Durham in South Durham, and I'm not entirely sure exactly what Javier Caballero will be presenting about the infrastructure bond. I more wanted to listen and be able to offer feedback and questions, but my assumption is that this is coming from a conversation that she was a part of on the BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission, brought to their attention in discussing some gaps in sidewalk, particularly as it relates to in the area surrounding schools, but also gaps across the city and county. And there's a particular gap that I'm hoping will be addressed on county-owned roads, where the NCDOT-owned roads, where the county doesn't do sidewalks, NCDOT doesn't do sidewalks. So if there were to be a sidewalk, it would need to come under the jurisdiction of the city. And that would be an additional cost. There's the financial burden of both the creation of and the maintenance of the sidewalk there. And so I'm hoping that this infrastructure bond will be addressing how can the city have an increased budget to address for taking ownership of these pieces of land and road to be able to provide those sidewalks because the city is growing. It's growing into the county, but it's not always taking over the roads there. So DOT roads aren't getting the sidewalks that they need. So there are pieces of sidewalk that are in front of new developments, but then there's not sidewalks that's connecting those areas. So I'm excited about this potential for a bond. There have been bonds in Carborough, Raleigh, and Apex in the past couple of years, up to more than 10 years ago, that have talked about infrastructure as it relates and have had components of safe sidewalks. And I think that this is something that Durham would definitely get behind, the residents would get behind. And bond is something that I think has proven successful with the school system. The Museum of Life and Science has had 2 in the past couple of years. And I think it's about time to start using some of this voting power for the community to put funding towards sidewalks, which I know comes up very frequently in a lot of meetings. So I'll yield to Councilperson Caballero to share more about the project, and just wanted to share kind of a resident's perspective and appreciate that this is being brought forth at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Marr, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your patience this afternoon. Madam Clerk, that's the only name I had for this item. So at this time, I'll yield to Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm just bringing this item forward because we've had a lot of conversation around a bond with this council and the previous council, and I do not want to lose sight of. So thank you to the resident who was just on there. It has been a robust conversation on BPAC, but this is independent. I think some of us who've been on council for a minute remember that this is a conversation, I think it started in spring of 2020, if I'm not mistaken, which is where the original green and equitable additional money was added to the CIP, knowing that that long-term was not going to be sufficient to meet some of our needs. So that's why I brought this forward. I just wanted to give an opportunity to staff to kind of give us some choices that we have in front of us as a council, and like what a timeline could be. I don't think that, unfortunately, I don't think we have time as this current council. I think I brought this up in August, and there's just been a lot of other things that have shown up on our agendas that were unanticipated. And so I don't think with the timeline left of this current council will be something we can move on, but I would like to go ahead and tee up the conversation for those after December. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Caballero. And you're indeed correct. It has been on our radar for a while. If I might, it'll be budget season before you know it, anew for the new council. So perhaps an advisory to the staff, as particularly when we look at CIP and our finance people, how they would envision incorporating another revenue stream for infrastructure, potential areas of need, how it would mesh with our division we already have for CIP and long-term infrastructure projects. Did you want to respond? Were you approaching?
Hello, Tim Flora, Finance Director, and I just really was here to answer questions about the timing of that, but what I would say from a timing perspective, this is about a 6-month process from the time Council initially approves it to the time we would get to actually the voting of the referendum. So what I would say is just since we are coming up on the budget process, this would be a great discussion to have during the budget process. But ultimately, from a timeline perspective, what we're looking at, it's about a 6-month process from the time that we would, Council would make its first resolution to the LGC to make application to the time we would get to November for election. And so, and that would be assuming that we have the anchor projects in place prior to that 6 months. So we would need to be, there would need to be a resolution by Council in June, early June, with the intent to make application to the Local Government Commission. And in order to do that, we would need the anchor projects. And so the budget process would be, this would be a good time to start these discussions and work it through the budget process.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Very, very helpful. And thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Did you have anything else, ma'am?
Yeah, just this was a just point of clear, more just for the public. This was something that was brought to us before, that we do not have to wait for municipal elections to put a bond in front of voters. We can do it whenever there's an election. So we have an opportunity We don't have to wait to municipal elections in 2025. We do have that opportunity in 2024. And so just, which our finance director is sharing, but I want to go ahead and state out loud that this is a great opportunity, and I hope that the next council really takes it seriously. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, colleague. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Freeman.
For Tim Floor, I just wanted to just verify whether it was good to do a bond in above 7.
Well, we always want good interest rates, and the general obligation bond is, that is what the city is rated for our AAA. And so that is where you get the best, absolute best interest rates. And so the market will dictate what that interest rate would be.
And is it better above 7 or below 5?
Well, an interest rate on debt would be best below 5%.
And I just wanted to bring that up because I think that it's important to acknowledge that in 2020 or 2021, we would have been near 0% with interest rates as low as 3 and 2%. And at this point, at 7%, we're going to be paying quite a bit more on the dollars or the debt that we take out to do this. And so I do want to be mindful that if we did bring it forward in 2024, it'll be at the bottom of a very long ballot sheet, which is why it's often on a municipal ballot. But I do think that it's helpful that it's been brought forward again. It would have been nice to have done in 2020, 2021, or 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, council member, and thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Colleagues, I think that we've exhausted our published agenda by my reckoning. With that, at this time, I'll yield to the clerk for her report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. The report starts with the Housing Appeals Board appointment. The appointment is to fill the vacancy of the at-large alternative member, and council has nominated Carl Newman. For the Durham Historic Preservation Commission appointment in the category of at-large, the nominee is Darnell T. Tabron. For the Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointment, for the category of walking, running, pedestrian community for marginalized groups is Nastasia M. Pereira. And then for our final commission, it's the Durham Workers' Rights Commission appointment. The vacancy is the category of diverse backgrounds. The nominee is Kayla Taylor. And then for the low-wage industry category, council has opted to re-advertise that position. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, for your report. Madam Manager, are we ready to settle the agenda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. We are. For consent, we have items 1 through 5, item 8 and 9, item 11, item 12, item 14, items 16 through 19, and item 25. For GBA, we have item 13, and GBA public hearings are item 20 through 24. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. For item 13, Councilmember Johnson, is there any work you want to request the staff to report information to be prepared for discussion on item 13 on the 6th?
Sorry, no, I think we've received enough information. I think I'm just interested in having more conversation with colleagues or having the opportunity for folks in the public to come address us again about some of the specifics in the RFP.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So thank you, Madam Manager. We've heard the manager's presentation for settling the agenda. I'll entertain a motion to settle.
So move.
Second.
I heard a motion from Councilmember Williams and a second from Councilmember Caballero. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The item is settled. The agenda is settled. We are at the end of our published agenda. With that, it is October 19th, 2:41. Madam Clerk, the gavel is down at 2:41. We are adjourned. God bless Durham.